This is Social Leopards. I'm Bea.
And I'm Beth. A leopard is a solitary creature living in the jungle but often not seen or noticed. Are you a solitary creature trying to navigate the social jungle?
This show explores loneliness and the many ways forward. Welcome to Social Leopards.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. Today we have another guest, and it's a very intriguing guest who is going to talk to us about an option that is perhaps unique and not well known within the wellness industry, but it caught our attention. Keely Shoup is a cuddle therapist and a boundaries and consent educator. She co-founded Cuddle Expo back in 2017, the first ever convention for cuddle therapists, or cuddle professionals, In 2022, she joined the board of directors for the Cuddle Party Incorporated, which leads the field in boundaries and consent facilitation training. Lots of big words. She is now the CEO and co-owner of Cuddlist, a training and certification platform for the modality of cuddle therapy. Welcome, Keely.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you both.
Same. Yep. So first, of course, we want to know how you came into the world of cuddle therapy. Would you like to start us out by sharing your story?
Oh, absolutely. I have several versions of it, some very long, but I'm going to keep it short for today in that ever since I was a very young girl, I was always very interested in platonic touch, and that was baked in between going with my mother to the NICU where she worked and holding the babies to later she transferred to hospice care. And so it was really ingrained in me from a very young age how vital human touch was, how much it impacts us and our humanity and our well-being. I always had a curiosity for psychology. I took college credits in high school for psychology courses, but it felt a little cold, frankly, to me. Now, I go to see therapy. I value therapy so much, but in doing the work, there was a piece that always felt missing, couldn't place it. Then went on to do other things, did insurance, did a lot of other things. And then in 2013, I discovered a event that was a boundaries and consent educational event that then, once you learned a bunch of communication skills around those concepts, the facilitator helped the folks of the event connect in ways that looked like cuddling. And that event was really transformative for me. That education was a missing piece. It was an absolute missing piece in my life. I dove headfirst into this world, eating up all the information that I possibly could. And in 2015, after 2 years of study and intense learning and being exposed to what this can be, I opened up my private practice, doing one-on-one client work and group facilitation work, teaching people these skills.
Fascinating. So now you have a special certification for the one-on-one, or how does it work?
So I will say this much, and it's really important. I really believe in robust consumer education, right? I think that is extremely important. There is no licensure or licensing body for cuddle therapy. So it is up to anyone seeking out a professional to be discerning about what kind of professional and whether they're matching what they need. And so there are several certification bodies, places that will teach pretty robust practices. Institutions that have trauma-informed courses are part of their education that are really attentive and doing this very well and doing it intentionally. But also, anyone seeking out any kind of professional, I hope that they are doing vetting to make sure that they are a good match for you. Some doctors who, are not going to be the right match for you. I'm sure most people have had those kinds of experiences.
Yes. Do you have... Go ahead.
Yeah, me too.
No, I was just agreeing.
Do you have, and this might be too soon to ask, but do you have, what is your screening process, or how do you figure out if someone is a good match?
Yeah, going back to the consumer education piece of it, in the screening process, I make sure they know what it is I do. I ask them a couple of questions about, so what was it that you were looking for? Let's make sure this matches. I've got a lot of social media presence and have pages and pages of things clarifying, but it's hard to read, or some people don't necessarily do all that homework because they're not used to it.
Right.
And so I first make sure they are looking for the services that I provide. Then we match vibes or personalities or making sure I am the right fit. Otherwise, I will refer them to my colleagues who are brilliant or have different specialties. For instance, I specialize in neurodivergent community. I'm autistic and ADHD, so I really have a passion for serving that community. I serve the queer LGBTQI plus community, and there are a couple other niches that I have. But for instance, I have a really wonderful colleague not too far who specializes in veteran care. And I have another colleague who specializes in recovery from addiction. Wow. And so if there would be a better fit, that's also part of the screening process, making sure they're in the right place with the right person and that I'm the right one to help them. And I am fortunate and grateful that my clients did find me, and it's a wonderful fit.
Thank you.
Can you explain a typical, or is there a typical thing that someone who seeks out cuddle therapy could expect?
I love this question, and it's always hard for me to answer because there are a number of really varied applications to this. Most of us have had some awareness or experience of the loneliness epidemic. You know, the two of you are very acutely familiar with that, and the Surgeon General says that the loneliness is an epidemic. Mm-hmm. And so I have a lot of folks in my practice who are isolated. They are trying to navigate symptoms of depression and anxiety. They are in a social location where they don't have access to the kind of beautiful support or community that they might want or need. And this space, my space, is a really wonderful place for them to get comfort, care, but also to learn some of the skills or discover some of the barriers or how to overcome the barriers for them to have that in other places in their life. So I always say I love it when my clients graduate because it means that they've found that missing link somewhere else in a different and robust way.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Yeah. And I think that, there's a huge connection, and you made that comment, between communication and physical touch. And I feel like people who struggle with that also struggle with communication in some ways.
Absolutely. It's so common. What I find, and actually a misconception with the name of what I do, cuddle therapy. There's many clients I have where we don't touch for many sessions because we can't get the health benefits, the physiological benefits of cuddling if there isn't a foundation of trust and safety. And for some people, learning the skills to communicate their boundaries, learning the skills to build trust in another person are where we have to start in order to get to a place where when we cuddle and produce oxytocin, our blood pressure decreases, our immune system boosts. It has all these wonderful health benefits to us. But we can't access it if we're in a state of uncertainty, if we're in a state of unsafety. Yeah. And so we have to work there first.
So in our generation, not saying that we're 500 years old, but women, and it still might be true, are trained to always be nice and say yes. And this whole thing with your boundary piece is fascinating to me because I feel like growing up, it was a constant fight to keep that boundary. I'd be interested to know, what are some of the common problems people have with boundaries?
Mm-hmm. I love how you put that, and I have a brilliant colleague by the name of Marcia Baczynski who had for years a program called the Good Girl Recovery Program. And it is unlearning a lot of the social conditioning that especially people who are socialized as women have. Be a good hostess, right? Be accommodating, be kind, be caring for the people around you, often to the subversion or repression of our wants, desires, needs, comfort, that you're so nail on the head with that. And so a lot of the times I'll even simplify it by saying it's a pretty step-by-step process. First, we have to work on the interoception, which is noticing our experiences in our body, to notice what even our boundaries are. So the first step is learning how to notice. Because if you've been suppressing it for a long time, that communication between your body and your awareness is cut off. I've been shouting for a long time and you haven't listened to me, so I'm just not going to shout anymore. And we have to build those skills. That's number one. That's hard. Second thing is verbalizing them. I might know I don't want to do something. But if I'm looking at someone and I have to say no, and my face starts to flush and my heart starts to race, my shoulders increase and there's a knot in my stomach, that's really overwhelming to overcome. So we talk about how are we going to take really good care of our body and our emotions as we do those things and practices so it isn't so scary, and so it actually can turn around and feel affirming. It can feel empowering. I can feel like I have all this agency and, oh yes, I can say my no. So we do a lot of work around that. And once we get there, then we work around diving into our desires. Desires can be a loaded word, but it can also be like, I love it when my clients have a realization, especially my women clients have a realization, like, you know what I want today? I just want you to brush my hair. That's what I want. Allowing themselves to have the moment of, if you really could have what you wanted right now with no expectation, no judgment, what would you choose? What does your body want? And sometimes it's, I want to lay my head in your lap and just have you stroke my shoulder or my arm or my back, whatever it is, right? So that's kind of the process that we do.
That's awesome. Yeah. One of the shorts or reels, I'm of that age where I'm just relearning social media, so please forgive me. But I did watch a quick little video that you had, and it was about screening potential clients, and that there are a lot of choices, and that yours is a little bit longer than perhaps the average or the standard. What makes a good client as opposed to a client that, may not be appropriate for cuddle therapy?
Yeah, I like to, awesome question, and thank you for asking it, first of all. I love that. And for me, I frame it just slightly differently, not to get semantically involved, but it's, where's the good match? Because people practice this in lots of different ways, and I don't think any of them are necessarily better than others. I often will say the sex work industry is a sister industry. I don't have any disparaging remarks to say about that world, really, necessarily. It's just, I want to be clear that someone is in the right place. Like, you wouldn't go to your oncologist and ask all about your heart, right? You go to your cardiologist for that. And that's how I view it. We just want to make sure that the person is in the correct place for the match that they're looking for. And so I'll ask some things like, when you think about this work, if you left feeling like, oh, I'm so glad I did that, what happened? What would you have gotten out of it to get you to that point? And that, whatever answer they give is really telling. It tells me a lot of what I need to know about what they're hoping for, what they're looking for, what they're struggling with, and to make sure that I'm the right person. I'll also explicitly ask, are you looking for a platonic service, or are you settling for one because you feel like it's the only option available to you, or some other things like that? And both answers are completely welcome here, because maybe we look at some different venues for you to get those very valid needs met. And I find that by being really open to the conversation that includes any of those things on the table to discuss, people are really honest and they're vulnerable. And so they can go, I don't want to waste their time and their money. I am not cheap in my sessions. I have done a lot of education. I've done this for many years. I've done a lot of expertise in this. And so if someone's coming to see me, I want to make sure it's worth their while. I want to make sure that this, as best I can, that this is going to be a benefit to their life. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this.
Yeah. So when I went to Cuddlist.com just to prepare for this interview, I did see that there was a code of ethics. What would you like to share on that code of ethics? Because you are the CEO and I feel like you have an opinion about it.
I do. I have plenty of opinions about it. So everyone certified through Cuddlist is operating under, if it's a Cuddlist session, some people are multidisciplinary. So there are some people who are Cuddlists, but then also massage therapists, but they have separate practices. We want to make sure that's true. But for anyone who's doing a Cuddlist session, the code of conduct is expected for every session. There's also two other elements to the Cuddlist method. It's client-led, and we have an opening agreement every time. But the code of conduct in specific is our clarity. It is the thing that sets the baseline for, what is this? What do we do here? What's the expectation? It can be really reassuring. It answers so many questions. Things like, okay, there's a minimum clothing requirement. Oh, If there's a minimum clothing requirement that is static and we don't change, that tells me something that I need to know, right? There's also a hygiene requirement to make sure that both folks are meeting in a respectful way. And it goes through all of those things that either just need to be said even if they're obvious, or that are maybe a little uncomfortable to say in society because we're not used to these kinds of conversations. So we spell it out right there. There's 10 different points of our code of conduct, and everyone adheres to them, our practitioners and their clients.
That's great.
Yep.
How do you, in addition to consent, assure safety in these sessions for both parties?
Yeah, for me, the biggest method I have to ensure safety to the degree that is possible, big ol' asterisk there, right, is communication. I know it's drumming that same drum over and over again, but really clear communication, what this is, what this isn't, and sharing my boundaries at every moment, having them feel really comfortable, encouraged, and supported in sharing theirs. That means nothing is taboo. We just are going to honor each other's genuine and authentic comfort and make sure that this kind of leads me into a tiny tangent. May I? Would you permit me?
Absolutely.
To do a little tiny tangent? One of the things that I love about this work, and that I referenced earlier, there was a piece missing for me in regular talk therapy and doing it, right? Cuddle therapy is relational. And what that means is that I don't heal my clients. I don't fix my clients. No one has that ability besides them. And I firmly believe that they have all the answers inside of them, and they know that they have the most information about their situation and how they feel about their situation than anyone else. They just need a place that they are supported to be able to figure it out. And maybe a couple of tools if they need those to practice them. But really, so there's a power imbalance, or there's a structural imbalance in traditional talk therapy. That's by design. It's a wonderful modality. But we flatten that. I'm a person, and you're a person, and we're going to have an experience together. And my responsibility, and the thing I'm trained in, is making sure that what we experience is held within parameters in a container that keeps us safe. But we're meeting as people, which is why the cuddling can feel so good, and why it doesn't feel transactional, why it doesn't feel like, well, why would I pay someone to do that? Because it's real. We are actually caring about each other in that moment, right? I'm not doing anything beyond being very present and holding someone in unconditional positive regard. And when people are met with that, they show up beautifully. And I don't run across safety issues when someone is meeting me there. And it's pretty easy to tell if they're not meeting me there in those screening calls.
Oh, okay, so you pretty much know. You haven't had an encounter where someone's tried to violate your boundary at the actual meeting, or have you?
Not since so it took me a couple years to really refine my screening process and my consultation calls to get to this point. But correct. Because here's the thing, someone can try, but there's always, I'm trying to say this intentionally, say this with a lot of care. I don't find it to be true that very many people at all are explicitly trying to get away with as much as they can. I actually don't find that to be true. I find what's more true is that people are conditioned to behave in a way that they think is expected. And when I give them an alternative and a roadmap, a very explicit roadmap to show up differently and how to do it, they want to. Because really what I find is people want connection. And they don't know how.
Yeah, I love that.
They don't know how to
get it.
That's
so true. Yeah.
What percentage of actual platonic touch versus people who just need to be in personal contact with another human and just to talk? Is there any kind of trending data that you follow, or your personal experience to understand how many people are more interested in just having somebody to talk to?
This is a brilliant question. I love this question, and is really hard for me to answer because those two things are sometimes pretty indistinguishable. Because we forget that words are actually only about 20% of human language. So really only, and I think that number is right. I just read a book by a fellow by the name of Dr. K, brilliant psychologist, and works with the gaming community a lot. But it's really just a fraction of what our language is. So when you say be, like, talk to someone, I hear you saying, like, they want to be seen and heard. They want to share. They want to connect, right?
Exactly.
So much of how we feel connection and how we as mammals process connection is through touch. That's a whole part of a language. That's a whole nother, or body language, or, yeah, those
Yeah.
mirror neurons are firing, and the really comfy, cozy feeling that is produced, that oxytocin, that all those health benefits, that is produced by type C nerve endings being activated. So that's
I feel like I'm producing oxytocin just like
Yeah,
listening to this
listening, but
conversation.
because she's so, you have this way about you that's so transparent and genuine. And to your point, when you're in a work situation, you can notice certain coworkers that will say something to you that's nice, but that that they don't feel that way about you. And I'm like a very kind of feeling sensitive person, like I have been all my life. And so when I am in a situation where people, it's not what they say, but the way I feel, I just get so uncomfortable that I almost have to put like an emotional bubble around myself and sometimes have headphones just to keep that feeling away from me. So you are correct about the nonverbal piece is huge.
That's
Yep.
one of the things that's so healing about some of my work with my clients. There's a specific example I'm thinking of with that, in that some of the folks who come see me have pretty ingrained self-esteem challenges, echoing themes of, oh no, I'm worried that no one will love me, or I'm disgusting, or things like that, right? Like those are some ingrained beliefs that unfortunately for some people have been given since they were a child, and they're ingrained, right? And so we work on parsing that out. And you know what's really interesting? You can sit with a therapist and have them say, no, that's not true, all day long. I could sit with someone and say, no, that's not true. I don't think that. I don't think that all day long. But if I hold someone and they can feel my steady breath, they can feel that my heart rate didn't increase, they can feel that my muscles aren't tensing and pulling away, they can feel the warmth and the relaxation, all of those parasympathetic and passive and things I don't control, right? Things that are not in my conscious verbal or conscious control. I can't lie with those. I can't lie and choose how fast my heart's beating. That is a natural response to what I'm in. And so in session, even recently with a client, I'm like, what does my body tell you how I feel right now? I'm not going to say any words, but you tell me, if you were just going off of that, what would you notice? And they're like, oh, you're relaxed. Yeah, and we're hugging. Does it feel to you like I'm recoiling? No. So there's a piece of that's so true that you can't argue it, right? But you can argue with words.
That's really interesting.
It is, yeah.
And another thing that came to my head while I was listening to you is how do I even ask this question? So what if someone loses their emotional regulation during a session? They start to cry, or they become very emotional, and I guess in any sense of the word. How does a professional cuddle therapist respond to that intense?
Yeah, so Cuddleist at the very least. I don't know, I cannot speak for everybody, I promise. I'll
Right.
say that very clearly.
Yeah.
But in my practice and in Cuddleist training, we have trauma-informed education, meaning that we are trained in some de-escalation techniques. If it's getting to a point where I'm worried that the client may be hurt by how intense or strong the emotion is, then we might de-escalate with some grounding, some meditation. There are a couple different, if people are familiar with the 5-4-3-2-1 or go get a sour warhead, there's all these little tricks, right? So we've got those. But you mentioned like emotional dysregulation, that's not a bad thing. I welcome that. I actually feel very honored that I am a place where many of my clients, this is the only place they feel comfortable crying. I think that is the biggest gift that they can possibly give me, because then it really sinks in. Oh, even when I'm a mess, I'm still lovable. Even when I'm not put together and perfect and regulated, someone still cares and isn't shying away and isn't running away and isn't trying to fix it. No, that's okay. We have some guidelines around our actions, right? We can't hurt one another, but feelings can be huge. Feelings can be big. We can hold all that, but there's enough space for that.
That's awesome. Thank you. I'm just thinking about people who I know are listening to this podcast and the things that they do feel, and self-esteem is definitely one of the things that I know that we've gotten a lot of feedback about, and people feeling unlovable or unloved. Sometimes they've just been alone for a very long time and they can't even imagine human touch anymore because it's just they've retreated into their own life and they don't know what to do to get out of it at this point. I think this is an awesome opportunity to try to safely exercise that. Yeah.
And for a lot of those folks, the idea of going to a cuddle session feels so horribly daunting because it's such a jolt. And that's an interesting moment for me to talk about. A good portion of my work is virtual.
Oh,
I'm
really?
a virtual cuddle therapist
Really?
too.
Interesting.
Yes.
How does that work?
Yeah.
I know. For some folks, you need to take some baby steps, right? And so we can do a lot through distance. There's so many exercises that we can do. There's some self-touch, don't giggle, just in self-meditation, things that can start to produce oxytocin so we can get used to it in our body. There's lots of things. We had to learn how to adapt a couple of years ago to online. And there's a lot of actually really beautiful. So I have a lot of clients who are hybrid, meaning we see them every week, but 1 week it's virtual, 1 week's in person, and so that they can titrate. Or I've got clients who, if they move, they don't have to stop the work that we're doing. We can still find ways, and then we supplement with other things, or we supplement with, okay, now where did you practice this in the other parts of your life? Like after we've done a lot of our work.
So how do you help them? Do you give them techniques to practice with other people or with themselves? Excuse me. How do you get them to transfer those results to their life?
Yes to all the things that you're talking about. And it's also one of the reasons why I work so much with talk therapists. So we do what's called the triadic model, meaning the client has signed a release of information, right? But the therapist, me, and the client are all working together. We communicate about their goals and things. And so what ends up happening is they're doing a lot of the cerebral or the mental processing in the therapy session, right? And then my space gets to be a laboratory space. How do I actually do it? I can think about it all day long, but how do I take it from the thinking into the doing? And then once they've done the thing with their bodies, I keep talking about body, that's why my work is somatic based. If you like, that term is really key to what I do. It's all somatic based because once something lands, you hear these words all the time, right? It lands, or you're grounded, right? Once it lands in your body, then doing it is so much easier. Honestly, the biggest challenge is taking it from the brain to the body, or from the brain to action. But once you're starting to do it in little places with some support, it's like before you learn to ride a bike, the getting on that first time. That's the real. I read every bike riding book. I saw everyone in my neighborhood riding bikes. I know I can do this, but it's the sitting on the seat with your heart pounding and doing the thing, even with the training wheels on. But the transition from training wheels to actual bike riding it happens in a flash. So I'm the one who helps them take it from not at all to training wheels, and then, well, but you got this. We've done it a bunch. Go ahead. You got this.
Yeah. It's almost like part of an exposure therapy program where
Well, yeah.
you're a step in that, is what it sounds like to me, because I've had some friends go through that for some phobias and things like that. That is an excellent point. And to be able to safely and securely feel that and not worry about the emotional dysregulation or any of the other things, because it's just between me and this person who's a professional rather than somebody who's in my friend group and I'm trying to trust them. I think it's a really great option for sure. And I love the fact that you could potentially pair that with traditional therapy as a step. I didn't think about that. So that's another piece of information.
Yeah, this month my company is launching a training program for therapists to work in the triadic model with cuddlists. so that they have even more tools at their disposal, because it can take their practices to whole new levels. The therapists that I work with on a regular basis are like, yes, oh my gosh, this is so great. My client's doing all these cool things, and then they get to come back to me, and we process so much. And like different things will happen in each session. It's very cool.
Do you have a favorite success story that you have shared or can share anonymously with us?
I can very, in my integrity and comfortably
Yes,
with
yes.
confidentiality, I can tell you some themes of things that have happened.
That's
Is
what
that
I'm
so good?
asking for. Yes, I don't want you to betray any
Yeah.
confidences.
So more than one person has come out for the first time about their orientation in session with me. They felt there was enough space and compassion and unconditional positive regard that they felt like it was okay to be honest about who they were for the very first, or discover it. Sometimes it's discovering it, or uncover. Maybe it's better to say uncovering it, right? I have a client who is a success story with recovery from addiction. Has been a year and a half sober. So that's really, and this work is really integral to their process in it. Actually, that I've got multiple folks who have that kind of tie to their sobriety along with this kind of connection work. A few folks came to me either in a relationship transition, or maybe with a relation, like someone passing, or however that relationship ended. And through a lot of our work together and the support, they're now in thriving, happy relationships. That's always really fun for me to know or hear. A couple people moving to new locations and like changing their life around because they realized, oh man, now I understand what I want, and I want that thing all the way over there. Go ahead.
Do you have a particular technique that you think is more effective than others, or does it just vary depending on the person?
Tell me more what you mean about technique.
Some kind of technique that you feel helps people, I don't know if it's get better sooner or deal with their problems sooner, or
feel comfortable sharing maybe?
No, it just makes them maybe helps them get better, like something that you feel you go to more often than not.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think I have a good way to answer that. So my practice, in addition to just the fundamentals of cuddle therapy that we teach, I'm also familiar with and have taken some trainings on what's called IFS, or internal family systems, or generically parts work. So when we can frame, and it matches a lot of the ethos of the very basics of cuddle therapy in general, it's just when we can look at all of the different ways in which we navigate the world and see those as the different parts of ourselves. So sometimes I have a really critical part, right? And that's the part that is always telling me like, oh, I'm critical about my outfit, or I'm critical about how well I did on that work thing or whatnot. And then I have a playful part, the part that is really where I tap into my best joy and whatnot. If we look at these as different aspects or different parts of us and realize that at the center is just this really beautiful, grounded person, then we can have a different kind of relationship. So I can say, I'm not too critical of a person. I can say, my critical part is really strong today. And then I have a relationship, I wonder what that part needs, as opposed to, I don't know how to navigate how critical I am of myself. And it's so personal. It gives a little bit of a distance and a way to have more tools around it. And how that matches with the cuddle therapy ethos is that all emotions are created equal. Everything has value or is in some way important, but we also have to be accountable for our actions, or we're monitoring what our actions are in relationship. So we can have these big emotions and we can embrace them and talk about them and get curious about them. But whatever we do, the behaviors that we have are always in agreement with each other and being respectful of each other. So that follows that ethos.
Oh, I like that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we wrap up, I want to give you the opportunity to say any last thoughts that are on your mind or things that you would like our audience to hear about cuddle therapy, and also to promote any links or ways to reach out if someone has an interest in learning more or pursuing a cuddlist.
Mhm. Maybe the biggest thing I would say about cuddle therapy in general is people who come to this work, there's not really anything unique about them besides they need support. And that's everybody. And if the kind of support, if you're curious about it, look into it. Because it doesn't mean anything about you that you want to go get support. It's like I'm not going to look sideways at someone who goes to the doctor because they need support. So I would just really try to normalize it. And this is just another cool way for people to live awesome lives that feel really good. Anything that we can do to give us the tools that we need to live amazing lives. Yeah, I want those things. I want those things in the world. And then so for promoting or backtrack slightly, and if someone resonates with doing this work, then my slight plug is for your benefit. You don't have to get education to start doing this work. That's true. That is factually true. But for your benefit and for your well-being and for your sanity, I highly recommend doing a little bit of training at least. Look up do some research, do some reading before jumping headfirst into it, because that's really what's going to protect you and protect your well-being for longer and make this sustainable for folks, is when they've got the tools that they need in order to do this well. And we're not equipped with those. We're not equipped with those from our society. There's different tools that we utilize in this work that aren't just like regularly taught. So that's my other little plug. And you can do that at Cuddleist. Cuddleist is a great place to do that. We train and then have a membership program to support people. So cuddleist.com, Cuddlist. It's also where you can find folks who have been trained like this. And for therapists who are curious about whether or not their clients might be really beneficial, take a look at us too, a cuddle therapist that can work with your practice. And Cuddleist is launching a new program for therapists to learn a little bit more about what that's like, and we're doing that this month.
That's really great.
And so it's March of 2025.
March of 2025. Okay. Yep. So by the time this episode airs, that will be live.
And you can go see it.
Awesome. Yes. And I just want to say one last thing that came into my head as you were talking is, because earlier you just barely touched on it, but we had so many questions and so many things to cover in this very short period of time. But I can remember after my father passed, it was a difficult time in my life. And I've talked about this openly on this podcast. And I didn't have a strong network of people to talk to or to even process my grief. And I was in a very dark space for a while. And I think if I would have known that this type of option was available to me, I am pretty sure I would have had a session, at least one session, to see what it was like, because that's what I mostly needed. And I love my husband. If you're watching this, I love you dearly, but he is not a cuddler. He is he is not comfortable with emotional pain, and I didn't seek him out for that purpose. This would have been a viable option for me, just to get through that space in time when that's what I really needed. So I appreciate.
Grief and loss are such beautiful processes, and they deserve to be supported.
They do.
They're such important processes, and it's a really reflection of how big our hearts are and how big we love.
Yes.
When that's not there anymore. So yeah, I'm definitely very familiar with how courageous it would have been for you to get that support at that time.
Yeah. Learned about you too late, Miss Keely.
Well,
hey, it's never too late.
It's
You're
not
never
too
gonna
late for me, because my parents they're in hospice now, so I might be reaching out for that support sometime soon. So I'm glad I have another option to deal with that. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to thank you again for your time today, Keely, and for this very informative and educational and inspirational conversation. Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Yes,
and
thank you.
I am going to lean over as we say goodbye and say, have a great week, everybody.
Thank you so much for having me, and that was really precious. Just watching you two hug was really lovely.
Thank you. We try.
Amazing.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Till next time.
Hey, Social Leopards, don't slink back into the jungle quite yet. We have 2 important messages to share. First, remember to like this episode, drop us a comment, and if you haven't done it yet, follow this show or subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can reach us on social media. You can also email share@socialleopards.com to contact us privately. All links are in the show notes. We love and appreciate hearing from those who listen to the show.
Second, we want you to know that this show is not intended to be a replacement for professional therapy. If you are struggling or if you need to interact with another person, check out the show notes for resources. Thanks for listening.